Alrighty, folks. One thing is very clear about our economy is housing is at record numbers for low affordability. Rentals aren't that much better. In fact, there's lots of people talking about how do we get more affordable housing. One of the answers that I've seen more and more people talk about, I've seen people like Brandon Turner on our discussion talk about this. I have many people in my community like Jared and others talking about rent by room. And we have the one and only Quinton from Pad Split, where we can talk about what Pad Split is, how it fills a need, talk about some of the misinformation and noise out there in the system. Quinton, thank you for being here.
Oh, Mike, this is so exciting. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to kind of continue to spread the word about the power of co-living as an exit strategy for real estate investors.
Absolutely. Well, do us a favor. This is the first time you've been on the channel, Quinton. Tell us who you are, what you do, and your history with real estate.
Sure. My name is Quinton Nguyen. I work for Pad Split in a multitude of roles. I've kind of transitioned from a couple different roles. I currently went through a heavy operational perspective of working with host members and ecosystem. That actually afforded me a ton of opportunity to see the whole landscape, kind of 10,000 feet, and get on the phone and talk to hundreds of people across the board to kind of get boots on the ground model. We've transitioned into, as our host population grows, there's so many hosts that are in different stages. And one of the things that we've kind of learned internally is not every host has the same problem. Yeah. So when you get to a certain threshold, you go from, oh, this is a great idea. I have one property, and now I'm building a portfolio of these, and I have a whole different bucket of problems. So we have this host success team that we've created that works individually with business owners. And that's more kind of, you would look at it more like a business consulting model, as to say, hey, you're now owning a portfolio. Your needs and wants are a little bit different. How do we help you actually achieve the revenue that you expected? And essentially, that's a lot of education and a lot of networking. So right now, I work with our host success team. I work with about 157 hosts that are, I would call them in the adolescent stage. You know, I have more than 2 properties, but less than 30 doors. And I have a whole new bucket of problems that I didn't have yesterday. And how do we get revenue moving so that I can expand comfortably?
That's really interesting because it's really funny. My background was in enterprise sales, and one of the most important organizations was customer success. Because, you know, if we use that analogy, right, there are, you know, folks that are new with the technology. Let's just call them babies. It's the first one, right? Then there's this infancy stage. You know, you've got 2 through 4. Then there's kind of like, you're starting to feel yourself. You've got 10, and then there's the true operators. I don't know where that is. Call it 20, 25, 30, whatever that is. But it's really interesting to kind of think about customer success now, you know, kind of coming to Pad Split, right? Really understanding, you know, the growing pains, because, you know, listening to Brandon Turner talk about it, he said he bought a couple of properties in Florida. I want to say Miami, but maybe it was Orlando. I think it was Orlando. And he's like, yeah, he's like, the only way these numbers work is Pad Split.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, if Brandon Turner is saying stuff like this, you know, more and more people are going to turn this way. So why don't we kind of casually walk someone through? Let's assume they have 0, and then they get their first, you know, co-living arrangement. What are the gotchas, the ahas, the things that you see most common stumbling blocks going from 0 to 1?
There are so many different avatars in our world that are real estate investors. I'm a perfect example. I was always a business owner. I owned distribution companies before, sold them, retired, kind of needed something to do. I had a friend that was at Pad Split and got connected here. And I had never done real estate outside of my own properties. And then once I got into it enough, I'm like, wait a minute, why is everybody else making money? And I'm just facilitating people making money. Let's get involved. So I went down the path of what most people do. I drank YouTube University for a ridiculous amount of time. And then I had enough people say, crap or get off the pot. So I put my foot down and bought a property, went through the painful stake of renovating the property on my own, getting lending, financing. I bumped my head on everything because ultimately I wanted to feel new person's pain. Right. So that's brand new W-2 employee wants to get into real estate. That's one way to do it. Or you can
Right.
kind of work with one of our folks that holds your hand a little bit closer. And that's one of the big things that we've kind of transitioned to is do not let our investors go work with somebody that says, "Hey, I heard about Pad Split. Here's a deal." And it
Yeah.
underwrites for them as the realtor because they're going to get 3% no matter what.
Right.
It
Yep.
underwrites for them for the GC because no matter what, they're going to get paid.
Yep.
Ultimately, we had to teach our investors how to view properties without emotion and underwriting correctly. So that's a big change for us is like come and buy it like an investor.
Right.
Or the other avatars, I'm an accidental landlord, I'm moving out, I want to do something with my house. Like all of these different ways that you come to us with our first property, the biggest thing is how do we teach you the business that is besides the doors? And one of the ways I try to talk about it really straightforward is converting a 3 to 4 bedroom into a 6 or 7 bedroom. All you really did was create an opportunity. Now you have to operate the thing to generate the revenue that you're
Right.
expecting. And that's where the transition lies from, wait a minute, I thought you guys did all of these things to no, you can be a passive investor, but you better put a team together.
Mm.
Like David Green talks about his core four and all these other things. Like we're not immune to all of
Right.
these rules of real estate. But if you come into it eyes wide open, because of the revenue model, and this is my favorite saying, Michael, you're getting a multi-family return from a single family asset. And what
Mm.
investors don't understand is you get 30-year debt. It's consistent. It's no 5-year balloons, for buying a small multifamily. Like you get so many benefits. And I don't know
Yeah.
if this is dated, but April 15th just went by. It was my
Yeah.
first tax year having rental properties. Unbelievably, nobody told me about that. I heard about it until I actually
Mm.
saw it, on my tax return. I'm like, oh,
Right.
that's what they mean by
Oh.
building wealth,
Look
because
at that number. It's smaller.
exactly. Because most investors come inbound and they're worried about
Yeah.
cash flow, dollars. And then they
Yeah.
don't realize, like, wait a minute, there's a reason why every wealthy person owns real estate. It's
Mhm.
because the tax code is written that way. So
No,
that's kind of a
absolutely.
tangent, but that just happened on April 15th. And I was like, oh my.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I actually like the fact that you brought up the whole 3 or 4 bedrooms becomes 6 or 7 because that's when I talk to different investors, folks that have done pad split, done co-living different ways. That's one of the things where I see operators be different, right? There's I'll call them the first timers, not really sure what to call them, but basically they're searching the MLS. It says 4 bedrooms, they think 4 bedrooms. Where the professionals are like, look at all this quote unquote wasted space,
Yes.
right? And it's relatively inexpensive to put up walls, a door, a closet, make sure you have egress to get out. That's where I see kind of the first evolution of somebody doing co-living is where they look at a house fundamentally different, right? It's not a 4 bedroom, it's a 7.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think of that?
I love that. I think that you hear certain phrases and you don't really understand the context. I've heard real estate professionals say biggest and best.
Mm.
I succeed because I know the zoning is biggest and best, or the location is biggest and best. In our world, it works on the Zillow view, right? The skill isn't. It's not how to Tetris a house. The skill is identifying. Wait a minute. Does this property in a right neighborhood? Because that's so important for us. And can I underwrite the property correctly instead of saying like, hey, I have hopium that I'm going to get $350 a week when everybody else is getting 125 or
Yeah.
157 or 185.
Right.
Be realistic and be conservative. Be pleasantly surprised when the revenue
Yeah.
comes. But you look at a bedroom, you look at a house, and then when you start walking the houses, you start looking at common space.
Yep.
And then you start realizing how to utilize it because our commodity on our platform is the bedroom. That's
Right.
$800 a month, right? We break it up into weeklies, but most of our average stay for us is 9 months. So we win on tenure. With all of those things being said, it's how do I break up this house, not mashing as many rooms as I want in there, but how do I break it up where that person's going to stay comfortably over a period of time? And
Yep.
that's when you start realizing, oh, that's the business we're in, is collecting long-term tenured revenue, but I have 8 streams of income, not one. And then that's when you start playing the business of like, this is the business of running and operating a co-living facility. You happen to use our platform because we have the most tools readily available. And instead of just strapping in and going for a ride like you're on a roller coaster, you
Mhm.
use us and maximize your business. And that's how our hosts are learning how to be really successful.
Yeah, there's so much in that. Let's talk about this whole weekly versus monthly, because again, I think that's a core attribute. You're collecting your cash in much quicker fashion. If I'm not mistaken, it allows you to operate with different tenant laws, right? Because you don't have to go through evictions and things of that nature. Might be wrong, not sure.
I'm going to just stop you there.
Sure, please.
The universal laws of real estate still apply to us because
Okay.
most of the eviction standards and everything else, we're not a short-term stay where like hotels have the ability to just kick you out, right?
Okay.
Like that's one of the benefits.
Nice.
If somebody stops paying and for some reason you have to go down the path of eviction, we
Mhm.
still have to go through the same magistrate courts that every other
Great.
state
Okay.
does.
I like it.
So keep that in mind is um the same things would apply. Like our platform, it's three major tenets of our platform for those your listeners that don't know.
Sure.
We provide as many eyeballs and members, that we call them members, that are looking to book rent by the room. Nobody spends more money advertising about rent by the room than we do. So think
Mhm.
Airbnb and all the little cute commercials you see on Instagram. That's what we do for the rent by the room asset class.
Mhm.
So we're 2017, 2018 Airbnb in terms of a new asset class that investors are looking at. We bring the demand. We also have a digital platform that allows you to put your rooms out there for people to see, view, look, and book. So we are in your short-term world, people would call it an OTA.
Okay.
And then we also handle all the comms and collections of rent because it's all digital payments. So those are the three major tenants that our platform provides to you. And it's up to you to operate your co-living business, which means that like you can be a great operator. Just think Airbnb. I have great hosts, and then I've had less than great hosts, right?
Sure.
But the
Yeah.
property and the asset class is the same. My
Got it.
experience is dictated by the operator, which then dictates the referrals and all of that, positive energy behind running your business.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about one of the evolutions. Again, I went from, being predominantly single family
Mhm.
rentals to multifamily. And, that jump for me was certainly painful because I was wrong. I assumed running a 5 unit, property with all one bedrooms was exactly like running a house. And let me just tell you, it's absolutely not. Turnover's higher. The hassle factor's higher. You're a counselor because of parking and, this, that, and other gripes. I can only imagine what it might be like going to co-living. Never done it myself, but I know it's a growing trend. What do you tell folks who are looking to get into this just to make sure they're going into this eyes wide open, because that's a lot of people in a defined space.
There is. And I think the biggest learning is that if you have the ability to set expectations with members coming inbound that are living there,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing how most human beings like expectations being set. Because
Mm-hmm.
I know what to expect from you, you know what to expect from me. And then
Right.
typically, like I joke that you watch kindergartners, you
Mm-hmm.
watch prisoners, you watch everybody in between that gamut. They just want to follow rules that are clearly
Right.
defined. And then if you're outside of that, you're just kind of outside the realm of following anyway. But like those people that run their businesses and set expectations on the inbound, they have much more success because they know what they're delivering and the member knows what they're getting. And so there's less ambiguity and anxiety around it.
Gotcha.
And if you treat the members like humans and clients, this is where Airbnb hosts that are coming to our model are killing it
Mm-hmm.
because historically it's just been let's put rooms on. There's a need. People are going to put a need on. And then the return of the Airbnb hosts that had struggling properties that converted over, and they're like, I need a different revenue stream.
Right.
Those people are killing it because they're layering on hospitality on
Mm-hmm.
top of the asset class. And
Makes
that's where
sense.
they're starting to see longer tenure and that your profitability goes up,
No
consistently.
question. Yeah.
So in
The
your
longer people
world,
stay, the better. Yes.
yeah. So in your world, the learnings of multifamily retrofitted into a smaller 7, 8 bedroom house because I'm gonna if I have bad plumbing, I'm gonna have a problem for everybody. right? If
Yes,
I
of
have
course.
poor air conditioning or your unit isn't big enough, you're going to have a problem. You can get ahead of so many things because you understand there's 8 people that you're answering to, not
Mhm.
just one house.
Yeah.
So those learnings are like openly shared, and we have a lot of best practices because this isn't our first at bat doing this.
Sure.
So we try to pay it forward with best practices to implement for new hosts, and then they layer on top their own personality and their own team, and that's kind of the product you deliver.
Hmm. I'd be curious. Let's go to the other realm, the other side of the equation, from going from 0 to 1. When you think about, I don't know what you want to call it, the largest or the best or whatever it is, somebody that's got maybe, I don't know, 50 rooms or more, what they're really running a business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, would it go as far as to say they're running a hospitality business, i.e. like Airbnb, or what kind of business are they running, when they get, those many doors or tenants, as,
I
what is it?
think the underlying business is around hospitality because there's people coming to you as clients who are going to pay you.
Right.
That's one thing. But
Okay.
the understanding and expectation is that we're not the Ritz. Like, let's not fool ourselves, right? Like,
Let's
we
not get
are
it twisted. Yeah.
right. I joke with our friends that like we're the Walmart of housing because that
Ah,
asset class doesn't exist, right?
agreed.
The
The Walmart of
demographic we're
housing. I like that.
serving for, it's for working class people that makes 40 to 80 grand a year. And I don't know what's happening in your markets, but like I'm seeing the economy,
Yeah.
it's hitting and it's real, and people
Yep.
are facing a lot of stress. That working class model, what we solve for as a platform is access.
Mm,
We get people more access to good, affordable houses. So instead of you being a C class apartment complex, I'm getting the same rate, but I'm living in a cul-de-sac with
right.
5 or 6 or 7 other people. It's the best neighborhood some people have ever lived in. The
Yes.
problem we run into is when the investors come in and say cheap house, cheap reno,
Mm,
financing leads the way. My question to you is, Michael, sit there at 9:30 on a Saturday and tell me if you want to live there.
right.
And when they're like, why don't people stay here a long time? I'm like, have you ever been there at night?
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
scare. You can't change location.
Yep.
And your clients are asked to live in a place that they don't feel safe. They're going to transfer. We have 18,000 other rooms for them to go to.
Right. I like that. I don't know if this is true. Again, these are just things I hear. I wanted to make sure I asked you about. I have heard some locations have restrictions on, I think they're called unrelated adults or something of that nature, where there's some
Yep.
kind of capacity threshold. Is that true? And if
Zoning
so,
laws are real, right? In
yeah.
our world, we work under the definition of single family. And
Okay.
so the city of Atlanta, where I live, we have 6 different counties and 6 different definitions of what a single
Of
family
course.
is,
Of
right?
course.
So our model legally is set up under one tenant, which is you LLC, owner of the property, have a lease
Mm,
with Pad Split. All the
got it.
members who live with us and live in your book in your rooms are members of a Pad Split membership. So if you want to get into the legalese of it,
Ah, got
but
it.
again, Michael, you've been around long enough to understand we can
Mhm.
fight that in court. But if your
Sure.
neighbor, who's a big Karen or not, says, "Why do your tenants keep parking on my lawn?"
Right.
And like, why do you have so many people? Your garbage is overflowing, your lawn is poorly maintained. You're going to get a code violation whether you're a
Oh, yeah.
multifamily, a single family, or whatever. So the basis of it is run your property like a business. Like, take away these things that people are going to complain about. Add value to your community instead of just being a taker. Now you have a long-term view of this thing's going to pump out 6, 7, 8 grand gross revenue for the next 5 years.
Mm,
And- But if you're going to treat it like a dead asset, that's what
right.
you're going to deal with, right? Like, bad landlords are just bad landlords, whether it's single family, multifamily, or co-living.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things I heard from somebody doing co-living, again, I always talk about a buy box, like what are the things you're looking for? He said he likes corner lots because it helps with parking, right? You've got two sides the
Yeah.
street to park on. Are there other kind of rules of thumb you've seen successful co-living folks kind of look for when we're looking for assets?
Yeah. Like, if you're are in certain markets where margins are tight. I use Florida as an example. If you're going to use a lot of your cash flow on insurance, right?
Mhm.
Your costs are really high. So sometimes you need an extra bedroom. So
Right.
taking into account the real actual business that you're going to be running in the market that you're at, that's important. But the buy box criteria for us is like you were saying earlier, can you monetize underutilized space that somebody else doesn't give value? Basements are amazing, but again, you have to understand the cost basis of adding bathrooms.
Mhm.
We work under a minimum ratio of 4 bedrooms to 1 bathroom. And people are like, "Oh, that's terrible." Blah, blah, blah. They're not all doing the same schedule,
Right.
right? I've got first, second, and third shift people. I don't personally love a 4 to 1. I try to stay to 3 to 1, 2 to 1 if I can. But it's up to how the house is set up. But if
Sure.
the buy box is set up for, if you, again, because we're a platform like Airbnb, you can have 6 bedrooms and a common space. You can have 8 bedrooms and no common space. You can have, I've seen successful 8-bedroom, 2 baths. I've
Oh
seen
my gosh. Yeah.
successful 6-bedroom, 4 baths. We have a ground up construction 9-bedroom with 6 bathrooms duplexed on top of each other.
Hmm.
That is a cash machine, because he custom built it for co-living with
Right.
5 en suites, 3 rooms share up front. So there's so many different ways that the asset can work. It's up to you to get comfortable with what are your local numbers. Underwrite it correctly. Like, don't have hopium. Use real data. We have more data. Our Air DNA data for co-living is so vast, and it's free because we haven't thought to monetize it because we're just trying to grow, right?
Right.
So take advantage of that because you're an early adopter. Leverage the data, do the math. Math, our
Yeah.
math is better than single family math. So if you had 50 single family houses, you're my favorite investor because I would tell you, what's your bottom third look like?
Mm.
Because they're probably in a B neighborhood that appreciated, or a C neighborhood that moved up to a B, B minus, B plus neighborhood, and you're still getting net the same amount that you were getting for years minus your debt pay down. Those houses you could convert to co-living and horse race them against the rest of your portfolio. I'm going to beat you silly in cash flow. I am. But the thing is, your cost basis is probably 2008, 2017 buys.
Sure.
So it's amazing if you fall into that bucket. You have the same asset class, but now you're introduced to something bigger and better, and you can evolve a portion of it that fits the right neighborhood, fits the right house. And you don't have to have 9 bedrooms because your cost basis is so low. You can have 4 or 5 minimal conversion costs, but you're generating more revenue per address.
Yeah, there is no question that co-living is solving a big need. I loved your analogy of Walmart for housing. I think that's accurate and desperately needed. We talked about misinformation right at the beginning. What's 1 or 2 misinformations out there that you just want to cut off?
Pad split handles that. That phrase gives me the willies. Like, you
Ah,
have to understand what we handle. Like, you're a business owner that's investing $300,000 into an asset that you're going to get long-term debt on, and you're going to have dollars left in the deal.
yeah.
Understand the underwriting, but you have to understand what the limitations of our platform are. And you have to understand that, like, if you want to be passive, build a team.
Mm,
I've owned franchises where I've had to build a team, right? I wanted to be a passive owner, but I couldn't have been, right? I have friends that own T-Mobile franchises in 110 locations. He still needed to run a business.
right.
If you view it like you're running a business and put a team together, you have the ability to scale because our platform allows you to scale because you're not chasing demand. You're letting us do
Right.
that. You're not chasing collections. You're letting us do that. You're not chasing comms. Like, your property manager is going to use our dashboard to talk to everybody that works there. You can scale because it's repeatable. So that one statement, pad split, handles that. You better define what the heck that means.
Yeah, you better know up front. No
Yeah.
questions asked.
And you better just reverse engineer what your business is going to look like when it's running. Don't
Mm,
don't celebrate you're going to activate 7 doors.
right.
Celebrate when it's full and running and you have SOPs in place that allow you to do that. Reverse engineer that. And if you're comfortable there, scale. Because you're not going to find early adoption, investors that are getting $6,000 to $7,000 out of a single family rental anywhere.
Mm,
You can do midterm rentals, and I love the folks that are doing insurance and midterm and all these things, but you're constantly chasing the next dollar. the next contract, right? So you have it up, ebb and flow, very similar to Airbnb. You're chasing time, whereas our platform, we deconstruct the space. So instead of the calendar is broken up into pieces, we break up the house into pieces. So in our house, you'll never have a 0 revenue month. 7 bedrooms, 6 will be full, 5 will be full, 4 will be full, somebody else comes in. There's never a 0 revenue month. That's the biggest thing that I need people to understand is you need to look at it like a business. How do I put systems in place? How do you adopt and learn the business? And now your second house would be such a better purchase than your first house. Because Michael, you as an investor and operator is different than me, but it still works because the math works in the way that we break up and market houses and collect revenue.
Love that. Quinton, if somebody wanted to learn more about Pad Split, where do we send them? Website, YouTube channel, where should we send them?
Yeah, you can just go to our website. It's padsplit.com, and there's a host side and a member side. And just make sure that you're logging in and creating a host account. They'll put you in our sales funnel and our process, and somebody's going to contact you within 24 hours. You can email me. I don't really care. My name is Quinton at padsplit.com. And there's so many other resources. The biggest thing I'm begging of you, don't just listen to the loudest voice in the room. Like, put some common sense to it. Like, absorb everybody's takeaways and kind of formulate your own plan on how you want to do it. Right. And like, I love Brandon. I love his boy Scott. Like, there's a lot of guys on his team that are coming into this space, but they're experienced enough to say, I know real estate. Tell me about your exit strategy. And they're learning and learning and learning.
Right.
And their plan is to iterate until they get great at it.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. That to them, Pace Morby, lots of folks are turning to Pad Split for a way to maximize and monetize maximize the monetization of their asset, which is real estate. Quinton, I'll give you the final word. What is your closing thought? And I want to thank you for your time.
I just think that it's just the biggest wave right now for an acquisition strategy and an exit strategy. If it, like the best corollary for us, we are Airbnb in 17 and 18. We're just early adopters are going to win. The competition is going to get fierce downstream. But the early adopters right now, like, we run 92% occupancy, which is asinine, right? So imagine, like, I run a 7.7 in Atlanta. It's been occupied 100% since the first 31 days. I wouldn't get that model anywhere else. So it works. The question is, are you a good operator? You know, like, do you want to build an asset class of a need that everybody's speaking of? And now you're figuring out how to monetize. This is it. This is where co-living. That's why all these educators and influencers are talking about it. Like, you can get in without a ton of barriers. You know, it's easy to get into it, and it's starting to get easier to scale.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Quinton, this has been a lot of fun. Certainly a lot of people in my one rental at a time community are talking about co-living. So I'm glad we were able to have this conversation. You want to know more, folks, go to padsplit.com. You're amazing, Quinton. Take care.
Thanks so much, Michael.